You do. I've sent people off into the world of go find out what your stakeholders need. And they're like, wow, they just wanted somebody to listen to what their problems were. So I'm starting to get this, right? And that's the truth. I mean, obviously they'd like to see some improvements, but just having somebody listen or ask the questions is like step one, right?
Right.
If you
Yeah,
don't
to
know what our
feel
problems are, you can't solve them. You can implement all sorts of technology that we don't need or
right.
don't want. But if you listen, you can obviously do that more effectively and get the right solutions.
Welcome to the HR Huddle podcast, presented by Sapient Insights Group, the ultimate resource for all things HR. It's time to get in the huddle.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the HR Huddle. I'm your host, Teri Zipper, CEO and Managing Partner at Sapient Insights Group. And I'm back for another exciting episode of HR We Have a Problem. This is the show where we break down the big and most relevant issues of the day. We help you make sense of what they mean for you. And we talk a little bit about what you could do about them. Joining me today is Michelle Stewart. Michelle is Senior Manager of HR Systems at Federated Co-operatives in Calgary. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, thank you. It's nice to be here.
It's so great to finally get you on the show. She and I were talking beforehand. We've been trying to plan this thing for like a year. So super excited to finally bring it to fruition. There's a lot going on in the HR tech world these days. And we've been doing a lot of work around HR system strategy with the cohort that we've been running. And that's been going really well. We kicked that off earlier this year. And I believe that this is kind of a passion of yours. And I was hoping that that's what we would spend some time talking about for the next 30 minutes or so. So does that sound like a good plan to you?
Sounds awesome. Absolutely. It's an area that I'm passionate about, so I am happy to chat about it.
Awesome. Then let's get into the huddle.
Okay.
So given the work that you do, and I know you recently took a new role, wanted to get a little more background on your experience and your career path and kind of how you ended up at HR Systems, and maybe tell us a little bit about your new job.
Yeah, for sure. So I joined Federated Co-op about 6 months ago now. So they are based in Western Canada. So British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. And what they are is a local cooperative. So it's the value of bringing everybody together to benefit from the synergies of, being able to buy in mass. And what they have is in all the little towns across those provinces is, that are often too small to have a big grocery store. They have a lot of these retails. And what they do is we buy in mass, share as customers in those small towns, you can buy a patronage to that co-op and then benefit from that co-op being there and, being able to purchase. We have grocery stores, hair salons, there's an ethanol complex, there's a
Wow.
refinery. Yeah. So what happened is, the refinery, for example, got built. A bunch of farmers got together and they're like, we need to create gas for all our equipment. And so built their own refinery. So it's really about, those retail stores and providing service. So we are one organization that is owned by 160 individual legal entities. So Federated Co-op is that group that comes together and, does, like I say, buys all the commodities, gets that ability to, benefit from the cost savings of buying for everybody. But we are owned by all those legal entities. So it adds a complexity to our business.
Right.
Yeah, I started in HR tech. I kind of fell into it. I kind of like to say that I grew up in HR tech. I went to school for IT. My practicum coming out of school was, sort of out of my post-secondary, was at a small company doing desktop and server support. So I got to fix computers and I got to go out and support companies with their servers. And, then I got into doing a little bit of development, building some custom apps and stuff. And it was really great foundational experience. But I had the opportunity then to get into the local healthcare and support them as an HR business analyst with an implementation project that they were doing. And so from there, I kind of just moved through HR tech as my career. So it was really, kind of, like I say, I just fell into it and I've grown up in HR tech.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of how I started working in payroll. And prior to that, I had worked in a small company where I did financial systems, and they were implementing a new finance system. So I helped implement that. So when I came back to the US, I'd been overseas. There was this payroll opportunity, and I was like, well, I know how to do technology. And they were like, great, come on, come on in. Like, at the time it was like anybody that knew anything about technology was like, you're in, you're in. And then you just kind of learn from there, right? Like we were implementing a new system. So I was like, oh, okay, I've done this before. May not be the same, space, but I've done it.
Yeah, exactly, right. So I kind of came in and they're like, oh, you're going to co-lead this project. And I was like, excuse me? But it was really great because I got to learn this system I'd never done before, got to learn how to configure it, from the vendor, got to learn how to build reports, got to teach the users who are doing that admin work within the system, worked with finance because they have obviously a connection to what we're doing in the HR space. And then got to learn position management, right? And do, balance the positions and keep the system updated. So it was really great. Like I got to just do everything and they trusted me, which was amazing. So from there, I moved on to an oil and gas company. So I moved from healthcare to oil and gas, and I was a position management analyst. So really kind of doing org changes in SAP. I also supported, so obviously did the position management, but also supported security, like when there was requests for those elevated roles, got to do that. So it was really great. And that's when I was like, yeah, I really enjoy being a part of HR systems and being able to make enhancements and fix things in the system. I wanted more than just position management. From there, I moved into the school board in Calgary, and got to be a business analyst working with an outsourced vendor. So this was, kind of working with our AMS partner to continue to develop the system. And it was then that I got asked, do you want to be on projects or do you want to be operational? And it was at that point in my career that I made a very conscious decision that I wanted to be operational support. Like I wanted to lead the charge eventually in that and just make an impact, because projects are sexy. They're a lot of hard work and they're really sexy, but then you get to go away and there's somebody else left holding the bag.
Right.
And that's where I was like, I want to make things better in the lives of my HR peers. I want to help them realize that this new technology that they've got is actually not bad. It's good, and it can really make their lives better. Because most people coming out of like a project implementation are always like, oh, it's not as good as our last system. And, kind of are a little bit hesitant to change. And I wanted to be able to help them realize that this was going to make a difference in their life.
Yeah. HR
so.
technology, it's been in my experience one of the most interesting, because it touches everyone in the organization. Not that some other apps don't as well, but HR, pretty much everything touches everybody. And it's varied and unique. I mean, there are so many different areas that you dive into, from recruiting and talent management to how to pay, how to manage performance, how to just manage data, and now how to govern that. That's a massive amount of data, right? That goes into this.
Well, and you're impacting your employees, and that's exactly it, right? Although it can be the same, it's different. You don't never know what you're going to do on a day-to-day basis, and you are directly impacting the lives of employees. Kind of you're that hero behind the scenes. Is kind of what I think. But yeah, it's just so interesting because there's always something to try and figure out, and something that you can just do to make things better. Yeah. So from there, I moved into another small company, and they had a Calgary-based HR system. I got to kind of work down in Texas to help them, implement those modules in Texas. And I went out to the UAE, and, it was just a really great experience to understand, how are they getting their vacation accrual, and what are their processes in the UAE compared to in Western, in Canada and in North America. So, and how do you take a system when you don't have one of these large scale products, and how do you make it work to the best of your ability? So that was really cool, really great learning experience as well. And then That was also, I kind of moved into leadership at that point, built a team up there. And then I moved out to a company in Ontario, which was a nuclear power plant, and got to lead the team. They had just implemented Workday. So this was my first experience with a cloud-based product, and got to come in and really set the foundation and the governance and kind of the expectations for how do we operationally support this product that has been delivered, and how do we improve our ROI on it. I spent 7 years out there working with that team before I came back home to Calgary, because it's where my family is. And, have now been working in Oracle, again, implementing a cloud-based system and doing the same thing here to help support the organization.
Yeah. It's not a once and done. I mean, it takes on a life of its own, right? And then, that whole thinking about what the short and the medium and the long-term strategy is for how these tools work together, interoperability, just the long-term results that you're looking to get and the business outcomes that you're striving for.
Hey, everybody. Got a quick question for you. Is your job easy, stress-free, and full of rainbows and sunshine every single day? Yeah, I'd say that's a big fat no. Hi, I'm David Noe, host of Speakeasy HR, presented by Payroll Partners, and proud to be part of the Work-Defined community. Take a step down into my Speakeasy live on LinkedIn and YouTube, where we tackle HR and business challenges through raw, uncut, unfiltered conversations. This is HR like you've never heard it before. Bold, real, and full of practical takeaways. Real guests, bold insights, authentic conversations that drive change. Catch every episode on demand through your favorite podcast platform, or all the content at speakeasyhr.com.
Well, and that's just it, right? It's that, you're absolutely right. It's not a once and done. It is, a living system. It's ever evolving. And that's the benefit of it being cloud-based and having these technologies, is to understand what it is that you can do, the new features that are being released, and how do you continue to leverage them in order to make things better for the organization. So you always have to be evaluating and looking at, where the gaps can be bridged, because, there's multiple releases a year that need to be realized and managed.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to understand that sometimes things get delivered and they are delivered light, and then they continue to evolve so that then you can, maybe where you couldn't meet the need before, you can now, so
Yeah.
It's fast paced as well. That's the thing I would say about HR tech, is it's fast paced.
Yeah. And even the small organizations that we work with have on average, 10 systems they're using from an HR perspective, even if that includes things like some of their Microsoft suite. So there's a lot of things. I was talking to a vendor at HR Tech, and they said, well, we do releases every month.
Wow.
I said, well, okay, so you've got releases every month. Let's say you've got 10 or 12 HR systems. So if everybody's releasing something every month, which is not unusual for the cloud, you've got hundreds of new things coming out all the time. And the number of organizations that I walk into and have a conversation with about what they're looking for, it blows me away when they tell me what they're looking for, and I say, well, your system does that. They don't even know, because there's just so much coming out in these solutions. They can't even keep up with it, and they're certainly haven't had a chance to implement it or really sort of figure out how to operationalize some of those new features.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's a full-time job. You need people to take a look at it, to understand what those features are, how they pertain to you as an organization, and you need to stay on top of it, right? Like if there are features within this release that are currently not something that we want to implement, then we need to make sure that we're keeping a backlog of it and we're reviewing it. It needs to be a conscious decision to continue to either say, no, we're not going to turn this on, or yes, we're ready to now. And I think that's the thing, is that when it comes to release management, there's all those items that come automatically delivered that you need to make sure that you're testing for and that you are looking at, right? So then they put those optional items to the back burner and often never get back to them. So it's about making sure you have that list and that you are looking at it and you're cross-referencing to them when requests come in for these gaps in your system. So it's really, and that's the structure around, kind of HR systems that I find lots of organizations, the ones that I have worked in, haven't necessarily had. They just need that foundation and that process to work through it. So it's about, like I say, keeping track of them, adding them to the backlog, making sure you're reviewing them, and making sure that when challenges come in, that you're understanding the problem. A lot of times you have users come and they say, I want X. Okay, but what's the problem you're trying to solve? If you can give me that problem, now I can kind of understand. I can take it back and I can look at what those enhancements we may not have turned on, or what's coming in the product roadmap, and we can look at how we can solve that. And I think it's also important to take a look at what can you do in the interim that's outside of your specific product to ease the burden. I had a conversation today with one of my peers, and they were telling me about how there's the new product is more challenging, and it's a bit of a lift, and they're waiting for this product roadmap to further evolve, and and I was like, well, what about RPA? Let's have a conversation about what RPA can do for you to remove those rinse and repeat items that are heavy lift, so that you can focus on what you need to be doing. And it was like a light bulb moment that they didn't even know what RPA was, and yet let alone how it could ease their burden, and so this excitement comes out from them in regards to, oh my gosh, we could leverage something that means we don't have to be manually doing this for days on end, multiple times a period.
Yeah, there's so much that or this other machine automation, AI can do to support HR. And HR is kind of tepidly walking into that, trying to figure out where to use it and not be dangerous, right?
Well, that's exactly it. And I think that's some of the challenges in the HR tech space, that is, in our personal lives, technology is evolving so fast, right? Think about our phones, and you think about app updates and the things that you can do, the nudges that you get to do something. The organization has to allow us to, be able to advance our technology, but also within the confines of what the risk is for the business. And then, that often can sort of slow us down from being able to move forward, right? So it can be a frustration point, but also understanding we have to protect the organization, right? You have to work within the guardrails of our infrastructure and what IT is, kind of able to let us do. So it's interesting that, what you can sometimes do outside of the organization is so much more than what you can do inside of the organization. And to me, it's like thinking about the generations across the organization from the perspective of, my daughter is 20. What she can do on her phone, she's going to be expecting to be able to do when she comes into the workplace.
Exactly. I mean, we want to bring that consumer experience to our data. They're all blending together anyway. Our daily lives have completely blended in with our work lives. Look, we're all working at home in our little corner offices, or in the basement, or wherever we can find a spot. So yeah, I mean, it's that real everyday, consumer experience that people are looking for. And I think that's it's something that the vendors are starting to pay attention to, but they're not as far along as I think we'd like to see them.
Right, exactly. Well, and that's just it, right? I have, this is my organization. I bring my own device, right? So I've got a BYOD. My Teams is tapping on my watch, which is really great. I don't have to carry two phones anymore until I'm on my day off, and I don't want to be bothered by the Teams messages coming across, those kinds of things. So finding that balance there, and, making sure that we're meeting people where they're at, I think is a big one.
Yeah. So you walked into this role, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago. Did they have an HR tech strategy, or were you kind of starting from scratch? And how did you get that going?
So at FCL, so they are in a very unique place in terms of, because of the size of the organization, so 25,000 employees, 160 legal entities. So we are partially implemented and still going live. And so, yeah.
That's not unusual.
and so and so the thing is that the leader that was the leader of this team has now moved over onto the program, is getting that implementation. We have 100 legal entities live out of 160. And so, they're the right now it's about, kind of focus on that implementation. And so from a strategy perspective, my sort of focus at this point is really about continuing to stabilize, sort of helping from that perspective, and also to then sort of create more efficiency. So, operationalize, create more efficiency. And then I want to get into really building that strategy for HR tech with regards to, what do we want? Like, and thinking about what those needs are as we move forward. So we're not quite there yet because of the fact that we're in, those two places. However, what I think is important is to take the time to understand what the business needs. So what do my peers within HR need? Where are the gaps? What is it that needs to be fixed immediately? And what are their blue sky visions, And all of that feeds into the foundation of creating a strategy, even though we're not necessarily specifically building that and a roadmap right now. It's really about understanding what they know about the technology and what can I help them to understand, and what I see consistently as I kind of go, as I've gone from multiple organizations, everybody's got their own list. You think about total rewards and recruitment and, talent and that they've all got their own list and they're all operating kind of in their own little world, and so one of the things that I like to do is come in and create one backlog. So what is that one list? What are the things that need to be solved immediately, right? If we can get that low-hanging fruit, then we've kind of take away that and we can start to then focus on the strategy. Understanding what the executive team wants. So what does my leadership want us to get out of this product?
Yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, one of the critical components of this role is understanding your stakeholders.
Right.
Do you know who they are? And if you do, have you started to build a relationship with these people? Because they're going to be the key to your success as you move down the road. If they're not bought into what it is you're trying to drive through the roadmap, you're going to have a hard time selling it. I mean, they're a partner, you need to be joined arms.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, right? If you can get people in at ground level, then, I mean, you get their buy-in. They may not necessarily fully understand it, but at least they feel like they've had a voice at the table, right? We're listening to them. We're understanding what is going on in their world. I mean, I'm not here to presume to understand what the problems is that they need solving. But if I can talk to them and build that relationship and that rapport with them and then listen to them, then we can then start to work together to solve the problem. And then that helps me with them, being champions of the product and for them to, be bought into it and not resistant to the change.
Yeah. Yeah. The change is huge, right? And that's, I don't know, how you guys are managing that, because it sounds like this is a multi-year launch and rollout, but having those stakeholders on your side and engaged in the change management effort is huge.
Well, and that's exactly it. And so, I bridge, I'm trying to, so the manager that is on the program for the implementation and myself from an operational perspective are arm in arm, right? So looking at it from the perspective of what are they doing? What are the new features coming out in these releases that we can leverage? How can we do this? And how do we make sure that we're talking to our stakeholders and that we are, at the end of the day, we are here for them. And without them, we are nothing, and I want to make sure. I really am a firm believer that I know I've done a good job when my HR peers are leveraging the technology without even realizing it. It's running seamlessly for them, and they're just getting on with what they are good at, right? And we, from an executive perspective or a leadership, even if it's the HR leadership, they see HR systems as a strategic partner for them. They are understanding that, we are here to support them and we can give them some guidance on how they can optimize the processes so they can get to more to get to do more and to focus on other things as opposed to, kind of having to run through technology and, that operational kind of process.
Yeah.
And that.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
you can get excited about the new technology, but at the end of the day, if the teams and the department and the people who need it don't see value in it, it doesn't really meet its objective.
well, that's exactly it, right? Then that's where it comes into how do we continue to improve the ROI on the product that we've just spent all this money and time implementing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
What are some of the things you're doing to then go back and make sure that it aligns with the overall business strategy? Because obviously there's the tech strategy, but then HR's got their strategy. So integrating with that and then ensuring that that's really aligned with the organizational, goals.
well, that's the thing, right? And as I came into this organization, it's about understanding, so what were the goals that they had put in place and what was it that they had for this year that I'm walking partway into, and understanding, what that means and having that ongoing conversation. I mean, from a strategic perspective, looking for what is that people plan, if that's what they call it, or what is the strategic thrusts that they have within the organization, and tying it down to an understanding how that ties to the work that my team is doing. I have been, in organizations where they don't necessarily really define that, but it's a combination of understanding what that vision is for the organization and then tying it, to, like I say, the HR strategic plan as well, and then pulling it down to making sure that the things that we are looking at are aligned to that, right? What are our goals for the year? What is it that is critical? And understanding that through those ongoing conversations with my leadership as well to make sure that we are not, out in left field. And I think it's really, critical to make sure that you're tying it back to the needs of the business. I mean, it's really easy to get caught up in, not being able to see the forest for the trees.
Very, yeah, no doubt. So you've been around HR systems for a while. What's your favorite thing or the thing you love most about HR systems? And then what's the thing that you love the least?
I think we kind of touched on it a little bit, but what I love is just making sure that technology is running seamlessly in the background, right? That people don't even realize that they have that technology. It's not a burden to them,
Yeah.
that it's really just helping them and them do what they need to do. I love seeing people get excited about possibilities of technology, in the HR tech space and helping them get to the place of being considered a strategic partner of their own. Like if that's really, really exciting to me. I think, the biggest challenges or the things that I like the least is that, being able to leverage the technology within the confines of the organization, right? So, we have a number of people who don't have mobile devices. How do we make it so it's accessible to them? And how do we maximize the functionality that we have if we can't let it through our firewalls, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
there's just opportunities that sometimes are missed or have to be put on hold because the organization's, IT strategy is just not quite there yet, and understandably so.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That is a significant key when you think about the blueprint for HR technology. You've got your HR tech stack, but outside of that stack are the other work operations and other technologies and strategies that have to be considered, right? Otherwise you end up with a different mobile strategy and a different content strategy, and you've got stuff all over the place that just makes no sense.
Well, and that's the thing. And then you end up bringing in other technologies and, like you say, adding to that stack, adding to the complexity. And then there's how do you know which product to use there, for this or that? Like
Right.
they're bots and they're AI. And, I mean, it's like, oh boy.
Yeah. Well, and with 25,000 employees, you've probably got somebody over here saying, well, we're using this technology to do performance. And somebody else is like, well, we're using a different technology for performance. And now we've got like 2 or 3 different performance tools. Nothing is the same. There's no cohesive approach to performance. And, now you're you got to back up before you can go forward.
Right, exactly. You go slow to go fast, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the thing. I think that's really, is really key is that at the end of the day, sometimes you need to go slow to go fast, and you need to hear what the problem is in order to be able to kind of really understand. And people just want to be seen,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't matter what you're doing. People just want to be seen and they want to be heard.
They do.
And that's the thing for me is those relationships are key because, you don't have to have all the answers immediately, but as long as you have that relationship and they know that you're there to help them get the most out of this technology, you can confidently say, I don't know, but I will find out and I will figure it out for you. And you quickly become a trusted partner for them.
You do. I've sent people off into the world of go find out what your stakeholders need. And they're like, wow, they just wanted somebody to listen to what their problems were. Like so I'm starting to get this, right? And that's the truth. I mean, obviously they'd like to see some improvements, but just having somebody listen or ask the questions is like step one, right?
Right.
If you
Yeah, it's
don't
the
know what our
first,
problems are, you can't solve them. You can implement all sorts of technology that we don't need or
right?
don't want. But if you listen, you can obviously do that more effectively and get the right solutions.
Well, and that's just it. If they don't feel like you're listening to them and trying to understand what their problem is, that's where they end up going back to the whole, I'm just going to tell you what to do. And you
Yeah.
become order takers, and then you're in this vicious circle of, well, you didn't actually solve the problem, and now you're just layering on all these extra complexities,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
yeah,
You
it's
told me you
worthwhile.
wanted a system, a succession plan system. You wanted a 9 box. I got you a 9 box. But
Right.
what was the goal of the 9 box, right? Yeah, it's amazing. And it really there's the questions, you just have to keep peeling the onion, right?
Right.
To make sure you really understand what it is they're trying to do.
Well, and understanding where people are at, right? Some people are just really tentative around technology and helping them understand there's nothing to be scared about. And, it's we can undo what we need if that's,
Yeah.
what we have to do and just giving them comfort to know that we've got their back.
Yeah. Is there anything from an HR tech perspective that you feel is still sort of on the horizon, something that you're waiting for? Like, when are they going to solve this particular problem?
I think there's so much in the HR tech space, and it's hard, I think the challenge is knowing everything that you could possibly do. And that I think it's about how can we leverage, AI, bots, RPA, right? Not just the conversational bots. How can we leverage all of those elements and nudges and all of those pieces inside of the product that we have, right? So we don't have to tack them on top. That's what, I kind of have these conversations like, okay, yeah, we want to build a bot for this, but like, wouldn't it be great if we could just have it built into the technology? You don't have to go get another platform. You don't have to work through the governance process within,
Yeah.
IT to turn it on. How do we really, and you see some of those, some products are starting to do that more and more, but there's still that challenge with, how flushed out is it?
Yeah.
It's really that, and I think we really need to be focused on where the younger generation are at in, and leveraging the technology there. I talk regularly about the fact that we need to be doing TikTok style learning,
Yeah.
and that, so how can we do those things within the technology to meet our younger generation coming in where they're at?
Yeah. Yeah. Some of it is, it sounds like what you're saying is less about a specific feature or functionality. It's really more about how we integrate things and how we take advantage of the platforms that we have to simplify the processes. And as you said, make people, not even realize they're using the technology, right? Like, oh, I was able to do this very seamlessly I touched 10 different systems, but I didn't know that. Right.
Right. Yeah,
I
exactly.
did it with a couple of clicks and I got what I needed and I'm off to the races.
Yeah, exactly. Like because like to your point, right? There's that tech stack that is, all the different products you need to go into, and you're going to go in here for that and there for the other and that for this. And, and you're like, oh, geez, and I got to track all my passwords. And, but if we can integrate it, like you say, and just make it so that that user experience is seamless. Doesn't matter what's sitting behind the scenes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
They don't have to see how the sausage gets made.
Right? Yeah.
So, Michelle, if there was one thing that for our listeners, people that are just sort of contemplating starting to put together their strategy around HR technology, is there any advice you would give them? Just sort of something they could do tomorrow that might help them start to understand the landscape and start to put their ideas and thoughts together around this strategy.
I mean, I think, as I've mentioned, it's that bringing that backlog together into one backlog, and basically being transparent,
Yeah.
be transparent about what's possible and how and when you can deliver. People, often frustration comes from not understanding the volume of work that's coming at the HR systems team and the technology team, So if you can be transparent about everything that's going on, and you can help them understand, then you can build a strategy that says, from an operational perspective, here's what we can do, here's the capacity that we have, and this is, these are the competing priorities, which ones are we going to do, and decide that together, as a larger team. Then that will help you in building that trust with them, right? That black hole approach of, IT got, days gone by, is not what you want to do. You really want to kind of be transparent and, and then evolve that strategy, build out that roadmap for your organization, and keep going back to it. It's not a once and done. It's a living document that is going to change as the businesses and HR's strategic priorities shift as well.
Yeah, I like that. Be transparent, prioritize. And, at the end of the day, be curious, because, when somebody asks you, hey, when are you going to get this done? Don't automatically assume that they need it tomorrow.
Exactly.
Sometimes that's a lot of what you do. You're like, oh God, they need it as soon as possible, right? Instead of saying, well, what's your timeline? How soon, what are you looking to do? Because, we've got some other priorities. Let's figure this out together. I tell people all the time, be curious, ask questions. Don't think you have to give the answer.
That's exactly it.
Because it puts too much pressure on you. And then you've suddenly, you're no longer transparent, because you've said, oh, I'll get this done tomorrow, when you walk away and you can't get it done tomorrow. Right?
Exactly. And that's what I say to my team. I'm like, the first question I always ask is, when do you need this by? People are not unreasonable. Right. And if you take the time to help them understand, you have all these things to do. But if you can, understand what their deliverable is, and whether this is a must have or a nice to have, and where it fits in what they're looking for, then that really helps build those relationships with your customers and your peers.
Yeah. We need to have you as a guest speaker on one of our cohort sessions. Come in and just talk about the real world. It's pretty cool. I mean, all of these people are in and around HR systems, so they're building their part of the cohort process is building their tech strategy. And some of them have a lot of experience. Others don't have as much experience, so they haven't seen a lot of the things that have happened in this world. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been very, very interesting and fun and challenging.
Yeah, I think it would be a great, course for people to take, and I think it's really great that you've put that together. Stacey and I have had lots of conversations about, about this being kind of a gap, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot out there for HR tech professionals. You can go to conferences for your specific product, and that's really great. But part of being a leader and part of being, the trusted HR tech supporters for your organization is just understanding what tech is out there in general, right? And looking at how, if your main HR system can't meet the needs, what else can you do to help solve the problem, and how do you build that in without making that, tech stack more complex?
Right.
How are we simplifying the experience, But yeah, I think that operational, there's lots of stuff around, project management, but how do you have that operational strategy? How do you understand what you need to do first and then what you can do later on? Those are really, like I say, projects are sexy, but you know what? In my opinion, operational support is meaningful and
Yeah.
makes a big difference in the lives of the people that you see each and every day. And that is where I get passionate.
Yeah.
So there needs to be more stuff around how do you do operational support better? Because
Yeah.
it's just as complex as project management.
Yeah. It's exciting. It's fun to just talk about.
Right? I know. I love it.
Well, Michelle, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been great. I know the people listening have enjoyed it. Looking forward to doing this again at some point. I want to thank our producers, the Brand Method Media Group. I want to thank our marketing team. And I want to thank you for tuning in. That's all the time we have for this episode of HR We Have a Problem. If you enjoyed the episode, you can subscribe to it on your favorite podcast app. We'd love it if you'd leave us a review. We'd love to know what kinds of topics you want to hear about. Drop us a line or schedule a chat on the website. And we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode of HR We Have a Problem. Thanks, everybody.